Good morning, children. Now, let's continue with the third part of this lesson, the next voice you hear. Okay, now in the previous session, we found how miracles were taking place in various parts of the world. Okay, we saw how the lion had escaped from Copenhagen, walked out as such. Okay, strolled out of the Copenhagen Zoo and it spied some, sheep, and it just went ahead and lay among them. Okay, a woman was suspended from the Arroyo bridge and lay there for 45 minutes, and she had to be rescued. Okay, so you find various miracles were taking place in various parts of the world, and there was also the next day, that is on Thursday. Okay, after there was also a voice which said that it was going to sink the continent of Australia for a minute. Okay, so we'll continue with this lesson here. After the Thursday evening broadcast, disbelief melted away. Okay, so many people did not believe that such things, miracles could happen. Okay, when such things began to take place in various parts of the world, people started believing that the voice was that of gods. People by the tens of millions became certain that the voice was God's. Virtually, the entire Muslim world was trudging the roads towards Mecca. Okay, so people now began to believe that the voice that they heard was that of gods. And as such, entire Muslim world could be seen trudging towards Mecca. Okay, the holy city. Firecrackers rattled day and night in the yellow dust of China. Members of a little-known sect in the mountains of South American Ozark wrapped themselves in streets and gathered on a hilltop to await the imminent end of the world. Okay, so there was this sect, okay, who lived in the mountains of South American Ozark. Okay, so these wrapped themselves up in sheets. Okay, and they gathered together. Okay, they collected on top of the hill. Okay, to await. They were awaiting the end of the world. They thought the world was going to end, so they all gathered on top of the hill. Okay, so then the Australian radio stations took over the air. Okay, so after some time, you find the voice could be heard. Okay, the Australian radio stations took over. Okay, the air. God had chosen the right continent for his final demonstration. People of another country might have put on a craven scramble for robots. Okay, so the moment people, if it had been some other country, or people from another country would have actually become would have scrambled to escape in robots. But here the Australians were not so cowardly. Okay, so it was thought that God had actually chosen Australia for his final demonstration. People of another country might have put on a craven scramble for robots. So here could be that if God had chosen any other country or continent, it would have been that those people from those parts of the country would have just run away, okay, scrambled away in rowboats, escaped. But not the Australians. The good-humoured Melbourne announcer observed, nobody is nervous or alarmed. Okay, so Melbourne announcer observed that nobody is actually nervous or even alarmed. The general attitude is that a minute underwater can do nobody any harm and may do some of our citizens a lot of good. So previously it was thought that God was actually going to sink the Australian continent for a minute. But here the announcer said that even if the people are going to be underwater for even a minute, it is not going to do anybody any harm. After all, it is going to do the citizens of Australia a lot of good. Arrangements were made for blimps to circle over Melbourne and Sydney and transmit eyewitness accounts of the Great Flood the Second. Okay, so arrangements were made for blimps. Here, blimps means a small airship, and this airship would be circling over Melbourne and Sydney, and this would be transmitting eyewitness accounts of the Great Flood the Second. Okay, so it is supposed that this was a great flood, the second great flood. The first flood was, of course, you remember, when Noah was asked by God to make a huge boat, okay, ark as such, and he was asked to take two of every species on the earth, okay, and then God had sent the huge flood, okay, to destroy the world. Okay, so this now this was supposedly thought to be the second flood. So arrangements were made, okay, so an small, okay, airship was to circle over Melbourne and Sydney, and it was going to transmit eyewitness accounts of the Great Flood. God had promised sizable miracles for Friday forenoon, and they were quite sizable. So God had promised that it was going to, bring, okay, or show miracles for Friday, for the forenoon of Friday. In the US, every last bit of metal owned by the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force was gone from its accustomed place. Okay, the moment, okay, they heard that miracles were going to take place in the US, every small bit of metal, okay, which was owned by the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, was all had disappeared from the usual place. The whole huge tonnage of it, from the buckles to battleships, was nearly cut up into scrap. So everything, okay, everything made up of metal, that is, whether it was buckles or even battleships, were all demolished, were all, cut up into scrap. By mid-morning, the other nation, whose war potential was feared by the world, had also lost all its military equipment. All of the shining rows of Russian tanks, planes, and siege guns were gone. Okay, so by next morning, that's a mid-morning, the other nation, that is Russia, okay, and Russia also, whose war potential was feared by the world, Russia also had lost all its military equipment. Okay, that is, all the tanks, the planes, and the siege guns were all gone. In their place stood rank upon rank of manure carts. So in the place of tanks, planes, and siege guns, they stood manure carts, each bearing a neat placard with a quotation from Lenin: peace, bread, and the land. So in place of tanks, planes, and siege guns, we could see rank upon rank, okay, of manure carts. And in the manure cart, there was a placard, and with a quotation from Lenin. What was written? Peace, bread, and the land. As for the protest meeting of the atheists in New York, barely had the group of demonstrators marched into Times Square than God turned every one of them into an angel. Okay, so there were people who did not believe in all the miracles, who do not believe in God, and they are protesting. Okay, as for the protest meetings of the atheists in New York. Okay, so these atheists, that is, these did not believe in God. Okay, so there was a protest meeting of these atheists in New York. Okay, and they had just marched into Times Square. Then God turned every one of them into an angel. So all the they became quite, almost as harmless as a, what do you call it, lamb. Okay, so all these protesters turned into angels. Arched, sweeping wings with feathers of purest white grew abruptly out of the shoulder blades. So we could see sweeping wings with feathers of purest white, which could be seen, abruptly coming out of the shoulder blades. And over the heads appeared halos of bright gold. Okay, so a circle, okay, of bright gold could be seen over these heads, over the protesters' heads. They had a frightfully embarrassing time trying to sneak away in taxis. Okay, so it was very, very embarrassing for them because they had come to protest, and they could see feathers, okay, of purest white and halos of bright gold over the heads. So they had a very, very, difficult time, an embarrassing time as such, trying to run away in the taxis. Okay. So children, we'll do a comprehension passage here. Okay. So let's start with after the Thursday to, okay, let's see, rowboats. Yes, after the Thursday, we'll start from here to, we've got it here, rowboats. Okay. Now, your first question, who was trudging the roads towards Mecca? Okay. So, we have it here. Look at this here. Virtually, the entire Muslim world was trudging the roads towards Mecca. Okay. So, who was trudging the roads towards Mecca? The entire Muslim world was trudging the roads towards Mecca. Where did the firecrackers rattle? Okay. Your question. Look at this here. Firecrackers rattled day and night in the yellow dust of China. Okay, so where did the firecrackers rattle? The firecrackers rattled day and night in the yellow dust of China. Okay, then the third one. Why did the members of our little known sect in the mountains of South American Ozark gather on a hilltop? Okay, so look at this here. We have the answer. Members of a little known sect in the mountains of South American Ozark wrapped themselves in sheets and gathered on a hilltop to await the imminent end of the world. Okay, so they were awaiting the imminent end of the world, imminent, impending. So, your answer, the members of a little known sect in the mountains of South American Ozark gathered on a hilltop to await the imminent end of the world. Fourth one, God had chosen the right continent for his final demonstration. Pick out the adjectives in the following sentence. So, which are the adjectives here? We have right and final. Okay, so the adjectives here in the sentence, right and final. People of another country might have put on a craven scramble for rowboats. Identify the tense. Okay, so what's the tense in the sentence? Okay, people of another country might have put. Okay, so the verb here is put. You've got have. So have put, what is it? The tense is the present perfect tense. Okay, so the tense here is present perfect tense. Okay, children. So I hope you have understood this part here. We'll continue with this lesson in the next session. Till then, children, go through the video and try answering the questions here. Okay? Thank you.